The soft clink of silverware and the mellow glow of candlelight made dinner feel warm, almost intimate. Victor was swirling his wine when he leaned back and said, almost offhand, "By the way, I'll be gone next weekend. Corporate workshop, big client, mandatory." He made it sound so important, like one of those career moments that could change everything. I smiled, feeling that familiar wave of pride I always did when he talked about his work. Of course, I wanted to be part of it somehow. I offered to help him pack, maybe even tag along if partners were allowed. But the shift in his face was instant. "It's strictly employees only. You wouldn't enjoy it anyway," he said, his fork pausing mid-air. His eyes dropped to his plate like the conversation had already ended. It was a small thing, that quick dismissal, but it didn't feel small. It landed with a weight I couldn't quite name. I tried to move on, talking about the weather, about the wine. Still, something in me stayed unsettled. I'm not the kind of woman who jumps to wild conclusions. Trust had always been our anchor. But the way he shut the door on my suggestions so fast, it left a splinter in my mind I couldn't ignore, no matter how hard I tried to focus on dessert. I kept replaying that moment in my head as I cleared the table, the words "you wouldn't enjoy it," looping like a song I couldn't turn off. What did he mean by that? He knew I loved events, that I could talk to anyone in a room. We'd been to plenty of his corporate functions before, and I'd always fit right in. It wasn't about enjoyment. It felt like something else entirely. Victor carried his plate to the sink, humming softly, as if nothing about our conversation had landed any differently for him. I caught myself studying him, the way he avoided my eyes, the slight stiffness in his shoulders. Maybe I was overthinking. But then again, maybe I wasn't. It's strange how sometimes your gut whispers before your mind can catch up. Later that night, as I lay in bed, I listened to the sound of the shower running. My mind wandered to a dozen harmless explanations, and a few that weren't. I told myself to let it go. But I also knew that once a seed of doubt is planted, it has a way of growing, quietly, in the dark. By morning, the doubt hadn't faded. If anything, it felt sharper. Over coffee, I watched Victor scroll through his phone, his thumb moving fast, like he was racing to get through something before I could see. He looked up, smiled briefly, then set the phone face down on the table. It was such a small gesture, but it sent a tiny chill through me. He used to share everything so openly. Why did it suddenly feel like there was a door closing between us? I asked him what the workshop would be like, who else would be there. He gave vague answers, brushing past the details like they didn't matter. "Just the usual," he said. "Boring stuff. You'd hate it." His voice was calm, but there was a subtle edge there, a warning not to push further. I felt that edge, sharp against my curiosity. I smiled, pretending I believed every word, but my mind was already filing away each little inconsistency. I didn't know it yet, but that moment, that casual breakfast conversation, would be the first thread I'd pull. And once I started, I wouldn't be able to stop. The next morning, after Victor left for work, I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop and a fresh cup of coffee. At first, I told myself I was just being a supportive wife, checking to see if I could somehow get involved in the event. But deep down, I knew it was more than that. I needed to quiet that gnawing little voice in my head. I typed the name of his company into the search bar, adding weekend workshop to the query. It didn't take long to find it. There it was. Bold letters on the company's own website, complete with a smiling photo of last year's attendees. And to my surprise, the event was open to the public. Not only that, but the itinerary mentioned a dinner where spouses were welcome. My stomach tightened. Every detail contradicted what Victor had told me. For a moment, I just stared at the screen, my coffee growing cold. A dozen questions raced through my mind, but one thought rose above the rest. If he lied about this, what else was he lying about? I could feel my pulse in my ears, and suddenly, I wasn't just curious. I was determined. I clicked through every link I could find, scanning the guest list, the schedule, even the promotional photos from previous years. Familiar names popped up, people Victor had mentioned before, and several had their partners smiling beside them in the pictures. So why exactly would I hate it? Why had he shut me down so quickly? The more I read, the less it made sense. A slow, deliberate kind of resolve began to form. I wasn't going to confront him yet, not without something solid. Instead, I decided I'd show up, quietly, unannounced. I pictured the look on his face when he saw me walk in, dressed to the nines, smiling like I'd been there all along. Part of me hoped it would be a pleasant surprise. Another part, well, that part feared it wouldn't be. I grabbed my phone, booked my ticket, and added the event to my calendar. As the confirmation email hit my inbox, I felt a rush of adrenaline. This wasn't just curiosity anymore. This was a mission. And missions have a way of uncovering more than you bargain for. That afternoon, I went about my routine as if nothing had changed. Grocery shopping, folding laundry, even texting Victor a quick, "Hope your day's going well." But inside, my mind was running at full speed. I kept imagining the ballroom described on the website, polished floors, round tables draped in white linen, the faint hum of polite conversation. And somewhere in that room, Victor. Or at least, that was the plan. When he came home that evening, he was in a good mood, chatting about how busy things had been and how next weekend is going to be exhausting. I nodded, feigning sympathy, but my focus was on the way his eyes seemed to light up a little too much when he mentioned the trip. If I hadn't already seen the truth online, I might have believed every word. As I lay in bed that night, the plan felt even more certain. I'd be there. I'd see for myself. And no matter what I found, one thing was already clear. The version of the weekend he'd sold me didn't exist. The morning of the workshop, I took my time getting ready. If I was going to show up unannounced, I wanted to make an entrance. I chose a deep emerald dress that always brought out my eyes, paired with heels that clicked confidently against the floor. As I slipped on my earrings, I caught my reflection. Calm on the outside, but underneath, my pulse was quick and restless. The drive to the hotel felt longer than it should have, each red light a chance for my mind to wander into what-if territory. What if he was thrilled to see me? What if he was not? I pushed those thoughts aside, focusing on the fact that I was about to get answers, one way or another. When I arrived, the hotel was buzzing with energy. People in business attire clustered in the lobby, greeting each other warmly. I checked in, my name sliding easily onto the guest list, and followed the signs toward the conference room. My heart lifted slightly with each step. But when I walked in, scanning the tables for his familiar face, there was nothing. No Victor. Not even a seat with his name on it. I stood there for a moment, trying not to look lost, but my eyes kept sweeping the room. People were settling in, some sipping coffee, others flipping through the event programs. I finally approached a staff member near the stage, a polite smile fixed on my face. "Hi, could you tell me if Victor, my husband, is scheduled to attend?" She glanced at her tablet, scrolling for a few seconds before looking back at me. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but we don't have anyone by that name registered for this workshop." It was as if the air got thinner. My polite smile held, but inside something shifted. I thanked her quietly and stepped away, my heels clicking against the floor like a metronome for the pounding in my chest. This wasn't about running late or missing a session. He wasn't here. He was never meant to be here. I pulled out my phone, my fingers moving almost on instinct, dialing a coworker of his I knew casually. When he picked up, I kept my voice light. "Hey, just curious. Is Victor enjoying the workshop?" There was a pause, then a low chuckle. "Oh, I thought he was off for a weekend getaway with, you know." My hand tightened around the phone. No, I didn't know. Not yet. I ended the call quickly, murmuring something about having to run, but my mind was already racing. You know. Those two words felt like they had a pulse of their own, echoing in my head as I walked back through the hotel lobby. The scent of fresh coffee and polished wood filled the air, but all I could smell was the faint metallic tang of betrayal creeping in. Outside, the sun was too bright, almost mocking. I stood on the sidewalk for a moment, clutching my purse like it might hold the answers. I didn't have proof, not the kind you can't argue with, but the pieces were starting to arrange themselves in a way that made my stomach twist. If he wasn't here, then where was he? And who was worth lying to me for? I started the car, gripping the wheel a little tighter than usual. My mind kept bouncing between the urge to call him right then and the need to wait, to collect more, to make sure. Because once I confronted him, there'd be no going back. And I wanted to be ready when the truth finally showed its face. That night, I waited for him in the living room, the lamp casting a warm but deceptive glow across the space. My coat was draped neatly over the arm of the couch, my keys on the table, like I'd just gotten home myself. When I heard his car pull into the driveway, my chest tightened. I told myself to keep my voice calm, my face unreadable. He walked in, smiling faintly, and set his bag down. "Hey, you're home early," he said, leaning in to kiss my cheek. I pulled back slightly, not enough to cause a scene, but enough for him to notice. "Where were you today?" I asked, my tone light but precise. "Because you weren't at that workshop." His eyes flickered, just for a second, before he laughed, shaking his head. "What are you talking about? Of course I was there." The way he said it, like I was being silly, made my pulse spike. I didn't let my gaze drop. "Don't lie to me, Victor." My voice was still steady, but inside the storm was building. He let out a short, sharp sigh, running a hand through his hair. "Claire, you're overreacting. You always do this." The words landed like tiny darts, meant to sting and distract. I leaned forward, elbows resting on my knees, my eyes locked on his. "I spoke to someone at the event. They don't even have you registered." "So, I'll ask again, where were you?" His jaw tightened, and for a moment, I thought he might actually tell me. But then his expression shifted into that infuriating mix of defensiveness and mockery. "You've been checking up on me now? That's cute." My fingers curled into the fabric of my skirt, holding myself back from shouting. "If there's someone else, just say it," I pressed, my voice low but cutting. His reaction was instant, a flare of anger in his eyes. "There's no one else," he snapped, his tone louder now, sharper, like he was trying to end the conversation by force. But the thing about truth is, it doesn't hide well under volume. And I could see it, the flicker, the guilt he didn't want me to catch. I stayed quiet for a beat, letting the silence stretch between us until it felt heavy enough to make him shift his weight. "Then why won't you look me in the eye and answer the question?" I asked, my voice softer now, but laced with something he couldn't ignore. He rubbed the back of his neck, muttering something about not needing to explain every detail of his day. That was all the confirmation I needed. Not in words, but in the way his gaze kept darting toward the door. Finally, he grabbed his keys, muttering about needing some air, like the walls were closing in on him. He didn't slam the door, but the click of it shutting felt final, like a thread snapping. I sat there, the faint smell of his cologne still hanging in the air, my hands folded in my lap. In that moment, I knew this wasn't about guessing anymore. It was about proving it. And once I had proof, there'd be no room for him to twist the truth into something it wasn't. The days that followed were a blur of quiet calculation. I didn't cry, didn't beg. I simply observed. Every bank notification, every stray receipt, every timestamp became a piece of a puzzle I refused to stop building. It didn't take long before I had what I needed. Hotel charges that didn't match his itinerary, a dinner for two billed to a romantic restaurant, and a travel receipt under a woman's name I'd never heard before. The moment I printed it all out and slipped it into a neat folder, I felt an eerie calm wash over me. The kind of calm you get when the storm has already passed in your mind and all that's left is the cleanup. I wasn't going to scream at him in private, no. This was going to be the moment he showed his real face to everyone who thought they knew him. I arranged a family dinner for the night he was supposed to be back from yet another work trip. His parents, his siblings, all of them sitting at our long dining table, sipping wine and making polite conversation. They had no idea that before dessert, their son and brother's carefully curated image would shatter like glass on tile. When Victor finally walked through the door, his smile froze the second he saw the table full of expectant faces. "What's all this?" he asked, hanging his jacket with forced casualness. I stood, my folder in hand, and motioned toward the empty chair beside me. "Sit. We've been waiting for you." He glanced around, clearly searching for an escape that didn't exist. I slid the folder across the table, the papers fanning out just enough for the bold headers to be visible. Hotel invoices, restaurant receipts, her name printed in black and white. "Your workshop sounded amazing," I said evenly, my eyes never leaving his. "Especially the part where you didn't go." The room went still, forks frozen midair, conversation cut clean. For a beat, no one spoke. His mother's brows knitted together, his father's jaw tightened, and his sister's gaze darted between us like she'd stumbled into the middle of a movie she couldn't pause. Victor's face drained of color, but before he could stammer a denial, a sharp chime from his phone broke the silence. His phone buzzed again, the screen lighting up with an email notification, the subject line in bold, unmistakable, "HR notification, report filed." I didn't have to explain it. They all knew I'd already made my move. His hand twitched toward the phone, but he stopped, as if touching it would only confirm the reality in front of him. I reached for my coat draped over the back of my chair, sliding it on with slow, deliberate movements. "I won't waste anyone's time pretending this can be fixed," I said, my voice steady, even gentle. "So I'll leave you to explain it to them." I nodded toward his family, their eyes locked on him like strangers meeting for the first time. With my bag over my shoulder, I walked to the door, each step lighter than the last. Outside, the evening air felt crisp, almost cleansing. My car waited at the curb, already packed for a trip I'd been planning in silence. My own workshop, I thought, the one where I learn how to live without him. And as I pulled away, I didn't look back.